This is my first post here and I thought I would share. I used to work as a Dish Network installer. Not the best job and not the worst. We sometimes worked in pairs or by ourselves, and I have a ton of similar stories. One day I had got to a job by myself to install a Dish system. When I got there, it was a woman in her late 40s. She seemed nice enough and even offered me water while I was outside. When I had to go and install the dish box inside both her living room and bedroom, that's when things got weird. I decided to hook up the living room first. I got in there, and while I was hooking it up, I noticed lots of unlabeled VHS movies lying around, and some that had titles on them, like Hot Summer, Naked Beach, and Plumber's Choice. I thought they seemed odd, but didn't think too much about it while working. The entire time I was doing that, she would talk to me, asking me what I thought about the job, asking my name and my age, telling me how she was a widow for a few years. After I got the first box done, I told her I would get the next one. She said that she was going to go outside to the back and have a smoke, and showed me the room before I went back to the van to get the box. I got to the van, called my boss to check in and let him know my progress, got the box and went into the bedroom. Once I got in there, I noticed the TV on the other side of the bed next to a window. As I got to the TV and started to make room for the box and make sure the cable I jacked into was near enough, didn't want to have to run the cable, and thankfully the ones that she had were up to code enough not to. I heard the bedroom door close. When I turned around, she was standing there in nothing but a see-through gown. She told me to be her bad service boy or something, and that she wanted to film me with her. I explained that it was against policy and that I was married. She said that she didn't care and was going to tell anyone unless I didn't do it. I told her to please step outside the room and let me leave. She kept refusing and tried to walk closer. At this point, I remembered the window and noticed it was open, so I dived through. Sadly, the screen was there, but hey, it came out with me. I ran to my van and immediately called my boss. He told me to stay there and that he was coming himself. When he got there, he asked me what was left inside. I told him. He said he would be right back and went to the door. He knocked and she came to the door still in the gown. He asked if she would kindly change clothes and come back and get him so he could get my stuff out of there. At this point, she asked him if we could have a three-way. His face turned so red I almost immediately laughed. He then turned around, walked back to me, and said that he would reissue for me anything left and that he was calling the office to let them know not to activate her dish and to send a team of people to come get the boxes and tools. From what I heard from some other techs I worked with, they ended up having to call the police because she wouldn't let them in and kept trying to tell them that we assaulted her. Whether it happened or not, the policy stated that it was immediate termination if a customer called about something like this or filed a police report on it. Thankfully, I never had to deal with her again, and I found that even the phone company had the same problem with her. Sadly, my boss quit 2 days later because he was tired of dealing with messed up customers all the time. Hey everyone, I don't post much on Reddit, but I need to get out what just happened a few hours ago. This seemed like the right place to put it. I'm a 29-year-old woman. I live in an apartment on the sketchier side of my town, so I'm not unaccustomed to strange people pulling up and strange things happening. I've been through a home break-in, so I'm very hyper-vigilant when it comes to keeping myself and my home safe. I also smoke cigarettes. A nasty habit, I know, but having cats and not wanting my house to reek like smoke, I'll walk out to my balcony to do so. That's exactly what I was doing when this happened. I was sitting on my balcony, smoking and just enjoying my night, when I noticed a car I'd never seen before pull into the back parking lot of my apartment, right by my balcony. I initially felt a bit off, but I didn't want to come off as being the paranoid neighbor, so I kept sitting and smoking my cigarette. Then I hear footsteps making a beeline through my backyard. There's a large and burly man that I've never seen before, walking briskly through my backyard. Again, I still don't try to make much of it because they might be there for my neighbor. My anxiety is definitely on alert but not in panic mode, until I realize he's going straight for my portion of the backyard. He then does something that is still freaking me out as I type this. He stops right in my backyard and looks at me on my balcony, not saying a word. Now I'm in absolute panic mode. I audibly say, "Oh heck no," spring up, slam and lock my balcony door, run to my upstairs bathroom, and dial 911. I listened to every sound from downstairs while I stood panicking in my bathroom, and truthfully, it sounded like somebody was messing with my back door. I don't know for sure because I was in hypervigilance. I do know that he was in my backyard for a few minutes because I was in my bathroom for several minutes until I decided to peek out my balcony window. I saw him walking to his car and getting in. That also tells me that I don't think he was there to rob me, but for something much more sinister. Luckily, he was lazy because, again, I live on the cheaper side of town, so you can imagine the quality of my doors and knocks. I'm really hoping it was just some guy who was drunk or high and had the wrong house, but my gut is telling me otherwise. Regardless, I hope we never meet again. I had a stalker years ago. It happened with a guy who was in the army. He was this guy who just showed up at a bar I frequented. He would sit and drink at the bar alone and kind of had this weird vibe about him. He was tall and slim and always had his head hanging with his hat pulled down low to his face. One day, my friend Danny goes up to him and asks if he would like to join our table. Danny is kind of a collector of misfits, so it's not unusual for her to be friending strangers or out-of-towners. This guy joins our table and is really quiet. He just sort of watches crappy war videos on YouTube on his phone while hanging out at the table. We get to know him a bit after seeing him a few times at the bar, and slowly he opens up, telling us old war stories from Afghanistan and how he was some big war hero in Korengal Valley. I at this time had just moved from Canada and really didn't know much about the war and its specifics, but this guy really liked to try and chat my ear off about it and show me these videos. He liked to play himself as the hero and talk about how he wanted to settle down and have a stay-at-home wife and all that. I wasn't really into him, the conversation, or the videos, and honestly, he was so full of these stories about being blown up and rescuing this family from a fire, and how he's up for the Medal of Honor. Just these really big elaborate stories that sounded kind of BS to me. But time goes on and he continues to hang around my friend group. At some point, this guy winds up getting my phone number from a friend. He would text me all these crazy things about how pretty he thought I was and how he knew I was the one. He would text that he wanted to take me away from my life, and one day I would see just how much I needed him. That he could provide me everything and that he wanted me to go back home with him when he was out and start a family. That I would make a great wife and a great mom. This guy knew nothing about me. I never really even talked to him as far as saying, yeah, or okay, when he would try to talk to me at the bar. I wasn't responsive to the texts, and frankly, they annoyed me more than they creeped me out at that point. I was a pretty independent chick at the time who had a really good job on Capitol Hill, and this guy would text me like I was some shrew who needed to be taken in and taken care of. I tried to avoid this guy when we were all out, but he would try and sit next to me or grab my hand or come up behind me at the bar and stand close to me. He would even sniff my hair or neck. This guy had a thing for sweat. Another creepy thing he clued me into. I would tell him to knock it off and he would keep persisting. Finally, I started to be a bit more firm, but he didn't back down. I brushed it off for longer than I should have. I was young and he was kind of dopey, so I figured what harm could he be? The behavior continued and eventually I had enough of it. I didn't want to cause an issue with my friends. I was kind of new to their circle too, and was only in it because Danny had found and collected me as well. So I took a little hiatus from the bar. The text continued, but they got more graphic. He started texting me about how much he missed seeing me, how he missed the low-cut shirts I would wear, and how he missed smelling me. He texted me about how he wanted to sleep with me under a mountain of blankets so he could, I shit you not, dear reader or listener, feel the sweat dripping off his chest onto my breast. That was the final straw. This guy had skeeved me out so bad, and I didn't care if I hurt his feelings. He couldn't get a clue from my silence. I called up Sprint and had them block every number he texted me on. I take a break from the bar, visit back home and focus on work. I meet a nice guy and life gets less creepy. Then one day I head back to the bar. I show up and all of my friends are there, but the stalker is nowhere in sight. Turns out he has a duty or something. My friends clued me in that this guy has been talking non-stop about me since I was gone, about how we were dating and how I told him not to tell anyone because I'm shy and hate PDA, how I'm going back to his podunk little town when he gets out, etc. This sends a red flag up with my friends since they know me and how I am, and besides not being the most confrontational, I am definitely not a shy person who would hide something so small like that. Also, he told a lot of other stories to them. One about killing an Afghan kid on accident and how he was going to be early accepted into the Secret Service but turned it down. He had their BS meter ringing. I show my friends the creepy and vulgar text messages that he sent me and open up about how uncomfortable this guy has made me. And they all agree this new guy has got to go. They all decide to block him and start ignoring him when he comes around. I continue to stay away from the bar for a while too and enjoy my new relationship. Some time goes by and I find myself nearly single, and I walk my back butt to the bar. I finish a cigarette outside and go in, saying hi to my friends and scanning the room and sitting down at a table with them. My phone beeps and I pick it up, and this is where things get pretty bad. I open my phone and it's a text from a number I don't recognize. I open the text and there is a grainy picture of me at the front of the bar, smoking a cigarette from about 10 minutes prior. My eyes bug out of my skull and Danny catches sight of my face and says, "What the heck?" I show the photo to her and say, "It's him." She has been with me through the whole ordeal and has referred to this guy as my stalker. She immediately goes into panic mode and runs and tells the bouncer that there is a guy outside the bar, taking photos of me and to not let him in. Danny and the bouncer go outside, but the streets are packed and it's downtown Adams Morgan, DC in 2008. She gives the bouncer a description of this guy, but again it's DC and the description of the tall blonde military guy is kind of useless since they are everywhere here. My phone goes off again and I'm starting to get freaked out. And it's him, and he says, "Do you want to see me?" I don't answer. Then he texts, "I'll see you soon." This freaks me and Danny the heck out, and we run upstairs to the bathroom to form a get the heck out of here plan because for all we know, he is waiting at a bar across the street or in a car or something. At one point, I try to open the bathroom window to see if we can get out that way, but it is painted over and red paint just cracks off everywhere, and it doesn't really open. We form a new plan, go downstairs and find the owner. He's known us for a while and he's used to our shenanigans, but we explained to him how serious the situation is, and I'm kind of shaking at this point. He tells us we can exit through the kitchen and out the back door to the back alley if we don't want to go out the front. He has the bouncer cover us while Danny and a friend of ours come with me. We go out into the alley and it's raining quite a bit at this point, but there's no one in sight. Anybody familiar with the DC/ADMO area knows that you can literally pop out through the alley into a neighborhood, walk down the street, and pop back into another back alley and wind up down the block if you like. So that's what we did. We took some shortcuts and made it down the street and towards the beginning strip of bars in ADMO. Not wanting the night to end or be alone, we made our way into this dive bar with a rooftop that I had never been to before. I probably should have called it a night by then. We go to the top level and take a seat at the back bar. After a few minutes, Danny does a walk around the top floor where we are, lets me know it's all good, and makes her way to the bathroom to dry off. Our buddy is now flirting with a cute bartender taking our drink order. At this point, adrenaline is pumping through me so hard I can feel my pulse in my neck. I get my drink, rum and coke, was my poison back then, as Danny has reminded me, and I start to try and relax. My phone is clear. Think we got away. Decide the coast is somewhat clear, and damn, do I need a cigarette. There is just a small hallway to the tiny rooftop patio, and that's where we were at the time. The bar isn't even that crowded, and there are a ton of windows out onto the rooftop, so the place is pretty well lit. There's really no way to get up to the bar without coming up the narrow stairs that are about 30 feet from us. I alert my friends and I make my way 10 feet from the bar and open the door on the rooftop patio. Now it's really pouring down, but there is an awning just above the door and to the side of the deck, and there are windows so I can see the bar. I spark one up and look into the bar. All good. I relax a bit and start to take a few steps to the side, still under the awning. Here the bar disappears, and there is a bit of wall sticking out, maybe 3 feet, and then windows again, and you can see into a storage room with a bunch of shelves and boxes. I peer into it and immediately freak myself out, so I step back and put out my smoke and go to head inside. That's when I hear the crack of the patio door. My heart literally hits the floor, and I'm frozen for what feels like forever. For a second, I think maybe I'm hearing stuff, and it was just the rain beating down on the awning. I'm still standing behind this wall, and I can't see if somebody has come out. Then I think I'm being silly, and it was probably my friends just looking for me, and I don't want them to think that I have left. So very slowly, I step out and peek from behind the wall. And there he is. I slowly step back behind the wall as if this would make him go away, and I can hear his loud-ass boot steps getting closer. I peek out, and he is coming towards me, smiling. Not wanting to die in a dark corner at a dive bar that smells like shit, I take a few giant steps out into the patio, into the rain, and within eyesight of the bar windows. I can see my friends, and it's super dark, so I doubt they see me. He says my name and steps closer to me. I step back a few feet, and my back is against the patio railing. I look over. There's another balcony below, but nobody is on it. I remember thinking if I absolutely have to jump, I will, and if he pushes me, it will hurt a lot, but I should survive. I turn to him, not wanting to make sudden movements or alert him to the fact that I'm scared. I smile and say, "Hey, how are you? Sorry I've been away for a bit. Haven't been around really." Trying to act natural. As natural as you can act in the pouring rain with a psycho in front of you. He smiles and takes another step, and I put my hand up. Kind of brace myself. I can tell from his face that he doesn't like this. He says, "Babe, you know I would never hurt you, so why are you being like this? Aren't you glad to see me? It's been way too long." He puts one hand out in an open gesture, and that's when I notice his other hand is behind his back. Has it always been like that? Now I'm really scared. I put my hand up again and say, "Now listen." He cuts me off and grabs my arm and says, "No, you listen." Push him off and slip a bit on the slick patio. I hit my knee pretty bad but catch myself. Now I'm pissed. I'm thinking this needs to end. Now, forgive me, dear reader, for the life of me. I do not know why I thought these next words were going to get me out of this. Maybe I thought subconsciously these next words would make him pity me and back off, but I screamed them at him. "Okay, dude, don't touch me. You almost made me fall, and I'm pregnant, so back up right now, or, so help you, my baby daddy's gonna mess you up." The look on his face was the stuff of nightmares. It was like at that moment, like in horror movies, everything goes silent. He is in shock and enraged. Looks like his face is going through all of these emotions at once. He stares at me and contorts his face in anger, then finally sadness. His body kind of slumps. Finally, he yells, "Are you serious?" "Yes," I mumble. "Maybe this will work." He stammers. "Then why are you smoking?" He stares at me a bit. I say nothing, then he puts his hands to his head and starts stomping, yelling, No, it's not supposed to be like this." He covers his face, and that's when I see it. He has a knife. Everything just got super real. He throws his hands to his sides, and now his face is red and full of rage. Snap out of it, and I scream. He is blocking my only safe way out, and I need my friends to hear me. He yells at me to shut up, then he points the knife at my stomach and yells, "Shut the heck up, or I'll cut that baby out of you." I stop completely horrified and taken aback. At that point, my friend Danny opens the patio door and walks out. She sees my face and sees him, and then the color just drains out of her. Then she sees the knife. She stumbles back into the patio door and whips it open and yells to our buddy. Our buddy runs out to the patio. The stalker points the knife at him and screams, "Is it you?" My buddy sees the knife and, without missing a beat, grabs a patio chair off the ground and launches it at the stalker. It hits him pretty hard and I make a mad dash for the patio door. We run down the hall, down the stairs, and out into the street and flag down some cops. Plenty of them there in ADMO. One cop calls it in and two run upstairs. I further explain the situation to the officer and the stalker is texting, blowing up my phone. "Is it true? I'll frickin' kill him. You ruined our family, you slut." The cop puts me in a cruiser and my friends in another and gets our statements. I show the officer all the texts and tell him how long this has gone on and that I want to press charges. The other officers come back and say that he must have gotten away and that there is no camera out on the balcony. I tell them all the info I know about him. The cops contact his chain of command and leave word with them, and I spend the next few weeks sleeping at a friend's house on her couch. No one ever gets back to me. No one lets me know what's going on or if I'm even safe. The last and only thing I heard through a mutual friend who had heard about the incident is that the guy got an overnight stay in the brig. Never heard from him after that. I work overnights at a 24-hour diner. You can probably guess what company. I'm used to weird people and odd things happening, but tonight was too much. The restaurant backs up to a field that has a tree line, and my cook and I went out back to smoke. We could hear somebody yelling in the distance, but we get a lot of homeless people that come through town that are usually harmless. So we just shrugged it off as weird and went back inside. Later I came out again to smoke and throw away some trash in the dumpster that is next to the field. It was stupid to go over to it, but I hadn't heard him again. As I'm walking away from the dumpster, I hear, "Hey, come here." It was much closer than when we had heard him yelling the first time. I went inside and got my coworker, who owns a car with a spotlight on it. He shined it out into the field, which again is not smart, and we admit this, but we couldn't see where he was. But he kept saying, "Hey girl, come here." Called the cops by this point because it was just too weird. As soon as I get off the phone with them, he comes walking out of the field. He's an older man wearing a tan trench coat, and my coworker and a customer ran back inside because this dude was hauling ass across the parking lot. He started to come towards the door, and I called the cops again. My cook cut him off and told him that he needed to go. The man was acting erratically, yelling at my cook, and said, "I'll end your life next time I see you, dude." He kept moving his jacket by his waist like he was flashing a weapon, but I couldn't see anything from inside. Cops get him down the road, and an officer comes by and basically says the guy's homeless and not mentally stable. We told him everything that happened, and my cook pressed charges on him. The officer told us that there wasn't anything they could do, and he wouldn't give her his name, so they let him go. Basically ended it with a, "Oh, by the way, he's known to carry a knife in his waistband, and just call us if you need us. Bye." He came back, again hauling butt across the neighboring parking lot and back into the field. We could hear him screaming, yelling, "Hey, come here," again and again. We got busy when the bars closed and haven't heard him yelling since, but I know he's still back there because I had caught him sleeping behind the dumpster before. My manager comes in the morning, and I'm going to try to get her to let me take a picture of him off the security tape so I can warn the other third shift workers. The field that he's camping out in also backs up to a middle school, but the cops said again there was nothing they could do. Hopefully he moves on and leaves us alone, or the cops can get him on something where no one gets hurt. When I was about 11 years old, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment with my mom. We were very poor, and the bedroom had double sliding glass doors that led out to the balcony. We lived on the third floor for safety and the cheaper rent it offered. My mother often stayed in the living room late into the evening because she liked to watch TV before bed, and I preferred quiet. One night, I was up at the top bunk. We had a bunk bed with a full-size mattress on the bottom and a twin on top. And my mom came into the room and called my name quietly. I'm a light sleeper, so I woke right up. She said, "There is somebody on the back porch. Don't move." She was standing just outside the doorway to the room and had stopped entering when she saw the shadow of someone behind the blinds covering the glass doors. The type of blinds that are flat when closed, but with the lights around the complex, you could see his shadow through them. I just remember being shocked that somebody could get up onto a third floor balcony. Then he started to knock really slowly. That's when I got scared. My mom went into the kitchen and called 911. I stayed as still as I could, hoping he would just go away. It couldn't have been more than 3 minutes, but the next time I opened my eyes, he was gone. When the police arrived about 3 minutes after that, they looked all over the complex but could find no sign of him. When one of the officers went out onto the balcony, there was no indication of how he'd gotten up to the third floor. But there were 2 very evident palm prints where he leaned against the glass for who knows how long before my mom walked in. Never happened to us again, and I hope it didn't happen to anyone else either. I'm a 25 female who has been living in Tokyo for 7 years. Never once have I felt threatened until this day. The city is incredibly safe. It makes you forget about stranger danger, which I know is unimaginable if you live in most big cities. Anyways, here we go. It happened 1 year ago. I went to see an orchestra with my friend, which finished around 10:30 p.m. She goes home and it was a beautiful night, so I decided to walk around this area of the city which I rarely go to, Tokyo Station. On a semi-empty street, this 40-ish-year-old Japanese guy dressed like every other salaryman here stops me and asks me how to get to the subway line called the Ibiya line. A bit odd, but whatever. I pull out Google Maps and give him directions. When I look up, I realize he wasn't listening and looked at me with these creepy eyes and creepy smile. He then said, "Where are you going?" I tell him I'm meeting my boyfriend close by. A lie. And he asks if he can walk with me. I firmly say no. My boyfriend was waiting for me. I turn around and walk away. Suddenly, I hear him cry behind me. "Please, I beg you, please," in English. And he is literally on his knees. I freak out and fast walk away. When I look back, he got back on his feet and was walking in the same direction as me. Now, I know I should have been more freaked out, but it does happen that random Japanese guys ask to walk with me and talk. I am mixed Asian, but look more foreign. They give up quickly after I firmly show it won't happen. It's usually harmless. I get to the busy train station, which is basically thousands of people, like fish schooling. I move in random directions for about 20 minutes to lose him. At that time, I'm pretty certain he couldn't have followed me in the crowd. I relax and stupidly go back to my plan of taking a walk by myself at night. I know. I walk through the gardens of the Imperial Palace, which is a huge park with no lights and no one to be seen at this time of the day. I took dark, empty streets. I had forgotten about the creepy guy and just admired my surroundings, the architecture, and enjoyed the quietness. I walked for almost an hour. I'm 4 stations away from where I met the creepy guy. It's past midnight, so time to catch the last train home. I go down the stairs to the closest station. I decide to stop and look down on my phone to check how to get home from there, when I feel taps on my shoulder. It was the creepy frickin' guy, with even more insane eyes and a smile. That's when dumb me fully realized that Psycho followed me through a crowd of thousands of people, a dark park, and small empty streets for over an hour. And guess what? The line he was looking for didn't pass by this station. I start yelling my lungs out and make threatening gestures to screw off and say get away from me, and I run to the gates where there are more people. He full-on runs to catch me. I pretend to go down the stairs to a platform and then quickly hide behind a column. I see him run past me, frantically searching for me with his crazy eyes, but he doesn't look back and he doesn't see me. I run back up the stairs and get on a different train. I call my boyfriend, who met me up halfway home. I uncontrollably shivered all the way home, petrified. In retrospect, if he wanted to harm me, he could have done it when I was alone, not at the station with people around, but it still gives me chills to this day. At age 12, I started babysitting for family friends who had 3 daughters ages 4 to 7. They lived in a cul-de-sac where nearly every home housed a young couple with children in elementary school. The neighborhood was extremely close-knit, like the 1950s American block party communities. They had a communal policy on using one another's toys. Any kid could use a play structure in someone else's yard anytime without asking. Shortly after I started working in the neighborhood, they revised the rule to any time a family is not using a babysitter to watch their kids, to ensure I would not get overwhelmed supervising a swarm of kids I wasn't paid to watch. It was thus more or less known when parents were going out and leaving someone else in charge of their children. I was allowed to take the girls to play in any other yard as they wanted. Their parents even gave me permission to let them play in someone else's yard or sandbox independently if I needed a short break. Being an avid Babysitters Club reader, I didn't leave the girls outside unsupervised ever. I would wait until somebody else wanted a water or bathroom break, and then corral everyone inside temporarily. Similarly, when the girls wanted to play in the treehouse owned by an older couple a few doors up the street, I climbed up, despite a slight fear of heights, and crouched in the little house with them, despite feelings of claustrophobia, to follow my own rule. I don't recall whether my everyone inside, everyone outside together rule preceded the first odd interaction I had with the immediate next-door neighbor or not. But when the police questioned the girls I babysat years later, they said nothing bad ever happened when I watched them because I set up that weird, sometimes annoying rule. One day, while playing basketball with the girls in the driveway, the next door neighbor came outside in a baseball hat and sunglasses and sat down on his second-story deck to read a paperback. I later noticed that he turned his chair about 180 degrees to face us and the basketball hoop. I couldn't tell if he was looking at us. He had no reaction to me staring at him, flipping pages in the book like somebody would when reading. This behavior repeated every time we played basketball for the 5 years I watched the girls. Eventually, once I noticed him in the chair, accessories on, I would suggest a game that we could play inside or in the front yard but out of view. The strange neighbor was familiar to me as he went to my church. I have never seen someone kneel in a pew, head bowed and hands folded, with the same level intensity before or since. Once when my family was seated behind him, the priest came over to ask me to lead the children's mass during the homily because the usual person was out sick. This guy turned around and glared at me like I personally set out to interrupt his prayer time. When I worked in the church nursery during various masses, I would often make eye contact with him as he waited in line, outside the nursery door, to use the restroom. From what I gleaned from our family, friends, and other people in the neighborhood, the odd basketball observer was a nice guy who gave up his apartment and job in the city to move in with and care for his sick elderly mother, since everybody thought he was great and he went to church. This was way before the Catholic sex scandal broke. I figured I was in the wrong for finding him creepy. Even as young as 12, I was used to guys in their 40s and 50s asking me to go somewhere with them, or driving by slowly as I walked or biked and jogged to make lewd comments. I figured I was projecting those experiences onto this awkward, quiet guy who was not doing anything wrong. For instance, I was certain that if the guy next door were a creep, he would not miss the opportunity to watch with his sunglasses on and book in hand while the kids and I went swimming each summer when the family opened their above-ground pool. But he never set foot out on his deck when the kids and I donned swimsuits to play in the pool or backyard. I was more convinced I was conceited and mean. That was when I was 15 or 16. I caught him looking in the window as I cleaned up after movie night. The girls and I put on a film after bath time, and instead of watching it theater style in total darkness, we kept some lights on so that I could braid the girls' hair. The big screen TV that we used for the movies was located in an addition on the house with floor-to-ceiling windows, though my parents were OCD about shutting blinds and curtains when the sun went down to prevent people from seeing in. Our family friends had no window treatments on the big modern windows. When I turned off the last light in the room, a floor lamp right next to a window facing the neighbor's house, I could see into the darkness outside, where the weird man sat on his deck in a chair in line with the window I was looking through. I looked over my shoulder and realized he had a line of sight on where the girls and I sat on the floor during the movie. As I looked back towards the house, I glimpsed him hustling inside. I would have doubted I'd seen him at all if he had not left the chair in an unusual spot. After watching him turn the chair around to read during a basketball match, I knew where the chair sat that night, facing the window into the family room, was not the chair's usual position on the deck. After that incident, I would suggest playing board games in another room or insist on watching movies theater style to ensure that he could not peep on what we did at night. Once the girls were asleep, I avoided the family room entirely because I was paranoid about being watched. If I weren't in the kitchen doing homework or reading, away from all windows, I'd walk around the original first floor footprint of the house, where all the windows had curtains. The first time the parents noticed my change in routine, they insisted I could watch TV or movies in the family room. I didn't mention anything to them because I was worried my concerns were silly and conceited. When I was 17, my family heard an evening cable news story about a man in our town caught in a police sting operation, in which a woman pretended to prostitute her 2-year-old. When they raided his house, the police found a ton of shit he shouldn't have on his computer. Our family friends called a couple of weeks later. They wanted to know how I knew the young man next door to them was not safe. He was the guy I'd heard about on TV. As they described it, the police found his blog where he wrote about his obsession with one of the girls who lived next door to him. He detailed his fantasies involving her and his plans to act on them. Things like lying in the treehouse for hours, hoping to corner her when she climbed up alone to play. Many of his entries focused on taking advantage of or kidnapping the girl while the babysitter was in charge. In his head, babysitters were like the ones in old movies, talking to friends on the phone or making out with a boy they invited over instead of caring for the children. As it became clear I did neither one of those things, his plans evolved to killing the babysitter, taking the girl, and getting out of Dodge City. After talking to the girls to ensure that they were not victims, the police suggested I might know something to have acted the way I did. All the pieces, the frequent run-ins at the church when I had children in my care, or the weird things he did when he knew I was watching the kids next door, all fit together cohesively. I was relieved I was not mean-spirited or imagining things. I was perhaps conceited. The focus was not on me, but on the children, but I was not crazy. I recognized I was not the person most at risk in this situation, and yet, this dumb suburb pedo and would-be murderer, let's not meet again. When I was about 17, I worked as a hostess in this restaurant and bar. If you have ever seen the movie Waiting, that's exactly what it was like working at that restaurant. My stepbrother was my manager, and one of the kitchen workers was one of my protector's son. It's important to know that my protector is my dad's best friend. We'll get to that later. It was around Christmas time, and we were having our Christmas party at our second location, and it started at 9 p.m. Everything that day was normal for me, but I noticed my mom kind of acting weird. When it was time to leave, my mom kept trying to talk me out of going. I wasn't going to miss the party though, no way. So before I leave, my mom asked me to call when I get there and call before I leave to head home, which was weird because she wasn't too strict with me. I get to the party and everything is fine, until my protector's son comes up to me and tells me that he was surprised I was there considering. I asked him what he meant, and he was surprised no one filled me in on what's going on. Come to find out that day at the restaurant, some man who was rough looking and had a teardrop tattoo under his eye came in asking where I was. The staff then told him I didn't work that day, and that they can't give out that kind of information anyway. He proceeds to tell my stepbrother, the manager, that he is my long-lost father and that I have no idea about him, but he wants to surprise me. At this point, my protector's son comes out and hears the conversation and tells the man that he knows my father and that I look like him. The man leaves. And I've got to say that my dad is 100% my father. I do look like him. So after this, they get a little bit worried that the man had some other kind of bad intentions and call my mom. I don't even know who that man could have been, but I know for a while I was getting random calls without somebody talking, just breathing, and I would often feel uncomfortable out alone. To this day, I wonder who that was and what they were planning. I just recently had a baby boy, and over the past few months since its birth, I spent a lot of time home alone during the day while my fiancé is at work. A few weeks ago, we had an incident that started a rather horrifying series of events. It was early morning around 7 a.m. and my fiancé had already left for work. After spending the morning feeding and lounging with the baby in our bedroom, he fell asleep in my arms, so I moved him into his bassinet located right next to the queen-size bed. We live in a one-story home, so all of our rooms are on the ground floor. There are 2 large windows in our bedroom. They are narrow but stretch from floor to ceiling and let in a lot of beautiful natural light. After laying the baby down, I went into the kitchen to do some dishes. As I left the bedroom, I noticed that my cat was lying on the bed near the bassinet. When the baby first came, I never left the cat unsupervised with him. My cat is a very small female cat and very quiet. However, I know that sometimes pets can act up when a new baby is born. Our son was now about 2 months old, and the kitty had been mostly disinterested in the baby, so I wasn't very worried. I grabbed the baby monitor just to be safe, but felt pretty secure letting the cat sleep in the same room as the baby. I had been in the kitchen doing dishes for about 10 minutes when I heard the baby fussing a bit on the monitor. He whimpered a few times, and I kept an ear out to see if he'd fully wake up or if he was just falling in and out of sleep. Suddenly, I hear the cat through the monitor hissing and growling loudly. It was a deep, throaty growl that I had never heard from her before. At the same time, the baby started wailing. The only time I'd ever heard him cry that type of cry before, was when he got his shots. It was a cry of real fear. I realized my worst fears were happening. I believed in having pets for life, and so when I found out I was pregnant, I went to great lengths to prepare the kitty. I wanted to make the transition good for her. I was very worried that she wouldn't transition well, despite her easygoing personality, and now here we were. My cat was attacking the baby, and it was my fault for leaving them alone. At the first sound of the hissing and my baby's wailing, I dropped everything and, with soap still on my hands, sprinted the 2 rooms over back to my bedroom. I walked into a scene that I didn't expect at all. The baby was kicking around in the crib, red-faced and crying, and the cat was sitting at the foot of his bassinet, facing away from the baby. She was facing the windows across the room, puffed up and still growling. She wasn't attacking my baby. She was positioned to defend him. I looked to the window but saw nothing. The thick drapes were still drawn with a small open space between the fabrics where the 2 drapes met in the middle. I pulled them back and saw nothing out front. The cat had now stopped hissing but was still quietly growling in a hunched up position. I picked up the baby to comfort him and pet the kitty until she calmed down. Didn't know what to think, but I was really on edge. Why had my cat freaked out? It was so out of character for her to react to random sounds or noises. I've never seen her so afraid. I remained unsettled for a few hours, but eventually forgot about it. A few days later, this time in the evening, I sat with the baby in the living room, between the bedroom and the kitchen, reading a book. My fiancé was home and just going to bed for the evening. It was about 9 p.m. He gets up at around 5 a.m. for work, so he doesn't stay up very late. He was in our bedroom with the door closed, and I sat in the living room on the sofa. Our sofa is directly in front of a large bay window. It's very wide and goes floor to ceiling. The drapes are still open, and it's not quite dark outside yet. The sun is just starting to set. At some point, I sat the baby down on a mat in the middle of the living room floor and went to the kitchen to get something to eat. While preparing some rice, I started to get a prickly feeling on my neck. I felt as if somebody were watching me, and for some reason, I felt really reluctant to look out the kitchen windows, which were also open. I quickly finished making my food and decided to take it in the living room to eat. I didn't want to spend any more time in the kitchen. I walked back into the living room, bowl in hand. The doorway faces the large windows, and so I was facing the giant windows as I walked in. That's when I saw her. There was a woman. She looked to be in her late 20s/early 30s, and she was staring, nose pressed up against the window, looking directly at my baby. She didn't seem to notice that I had walked into the room. She just intently stared at the baby. She looked angry. I felt terrified. I grabbed the baby and yelled for my fiancé. The lady in the window then took off running. My fiancé came out in his boxers and was still half asleep. I told him about the woman and then about the previous day when the cat defended the baby. I became convinced that she had been watching the baby the day as well. The last incident happened fairly recently, and I haven't noticed anything since, but I'm afraid that she's not done yet. I honestly think she wants my baby. I can't explain why I think that, but I am convinced that she wants to kidnap him. I was hoping I would never have a story to share. Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago it started. In hindsight, I guess it started a long time ago. My now husband and I moved in together almost 4 years ago to a rather nice, albeit expensive apartment complex in a sort of nice part of town. We are on the 3rd floor with a large balcony that looks out onto the courtyard in which other apartments in the complex are located. Basically, you can see the other balconies and living rooms of the other tenants and the open stairwells. A year goes by without a hitch. My husband works at a bar, so he comes home late while I usually make it home around 5. It is easy to get to my apartment doorway as the complex is large and open with no security doors, except the door to the apartment. It started in August of 2016. I would be home after work chilling and watching TV, almost always around 9:30. I could hear somebody coming up the stairs. Things would be quiet and all of a sudden, loud sharp knocks on my door. I did not move because it was startling, but eventually went to look at the peephole. There stood 3 people, all with black hoodies on, all seemingly staring at the peephole like they could see me. I didn't answer the door, and after a while they left. Cue a few weeks later, same time but this incident. Footsteps and then loud hard bangs on the door that sent my cat flying to hide. Sat frozen, but said to myself, maybe police? I made it to the peephole once again, this time staring out at one person, a dark hoodie, male, white, and very gaunt with huge black eyes. Again, I didn't answer the door and grabbed the kitchen knife that I kept by my side until my husband came home. This continued for weeks, and once when my husband was home, he proceeded to look out of the peephole, saw the same man, and screamed for him to leave. And he did. We called maintenance and the police, who both stated that they would do regular patrols but nothing else and suggested cameras. Everything stopped for a while, maybe 6 months during the winter, which helped me be at ease because when all this was happening, I was having a very hard time sleeping and stopped going out at night. However, I assumed the same man started up again, except this time, the same large bangs on the door would happen, but when I would look out of the peephole, nobody was there. I then became horrified as I started to notice extinguished cigarette butts by the side of my door, like somebody was standing and waiting. Again, I reported it, and security stepped up in the area, but I still did not feel safe. I was hoping it would just stop, as I felt tortured in my own home. But as I realized 2 weeks ago, things could be much worse. At night, to go to bed, I would have to cross our eating area, which was right in front of our giant glass sliding door that led out to our balcony. It was late at night, lights off in the apartment. As I walk by, I glance over, and across the courtyard, I see the same man standing on the landing of the stairs across the way from the second to third floor, staring right at my balcony, just standing there unmoved, facing in the direction of me, the same man at my door. I went numb, heart racing, chilled to the bone. I know he couldn't have seen me because the lights were off and the stairway had lights of its own, but I was still scared shitless. I called my husband, who rushed over, but the man had left. More reports to the front office. More promised security patrols. This same creepy dead-eyed man in the black hoodie continued to stand at the stairway landing, staring at my apartment. It has now been 2 weeks, and he has been doing this every Friday. I am horrified and have been having awful nightmares about someone breaking in and strangling me in my sleep.